Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Dr. R, and we are going to embark on the neurology high yield step 1 playlist. Really excited to get this started. So really quickly, let's just go through this outline here. So we're going to talk about the notochord neural tube meninges, some origins of nervous tissue and neural tube defects. We're primarily going to be focused in these videos on going through the high yield material. What's the material that we absolutely should know for the test? I'll sprinkle in some other stuff here and there, but we're going to primarily focus on the high yield. So let's start here. The notochord forms the nucleus pulposus of the intervertebral discs. The notochord, it's important to remember that it's derived from mesoderm. So there's 100 of these different embryonic derivatives that you have to memorize. Where does it come from? Now there's certain ones though that are very important, and the notochord is one of those you really want to remember because it kind of sounds like it's from ectoderm, but it's really from mesoderm. So you have to remember that the notochord is from mesoderm, but stipulation, it stimulates ectoderm to then turn into neuroectoderm. So that's where they kind of get you where it gets a little confusing. And this is going to happen really early on in the first 2.5 weeks of gestation. So I know this kind of gets crazy when we start talking about all these things, but for the visual learners out there, let's just take a quick look at this. So we have the notochord down here, again, derived from mesoderm, right? So this is derived from mesoderm, but it's going to stimulate this area up here. Now this area is made up of ectoderm, so it's going to stimulate this area to turn into neuroectoderm, okay? And then eventually we'll get this layer here, which is the neural plate that forms, and the neural plate will kind of sandwich in on itself, and these areas on the outside of the ectoderm will come together, and those areas will form the neural crest cells, and then the area of the neural plate, everything is going to kind of loop in cylindrically. This comes in to play when we start to talk about neural tube defects, because if that tube doesn't close at the right spots, we can get different, very classic high yield presentations of neural tube defects. Notochord will kind of just turn into the nucleus pulposus of the intervertebral discs, and that is particularly high yield to remember as well. So again, the neural tube is derived from that medial portion of the ectoderm that we just looked at. It fuses dorsally up here to form the neural tube, and that happens about at 3 weeks of gestation, because remember, the notochord is going to stimulate that process to happen. Recall, just going to quiz you before we go through it, what are some causes of neural tube defects that can kind of bog this process down? So the big one is folic acid deficiency in pregnancy. That's a big one. Chiari malformations we'll talk about in a future video. That also is a very high yield association. And then there are certain medications. Now we can sit here and memorize, 20 medications, but what are the big ones that you really want to remember? You want to remember the anti-seizure medications, such as valproic acid, carbamazepine, right? Those are the big ones because they cause folic acid deficiency. Anything that causes a folic acid deficiency is going to predispose mom to neural tube defects. So how about something that inhibits dihydrofolate reductase? Right now we're tying in the biochemistry here, but again, trimethoprim is a big one. Methotrexate, right? She's got a history of rheumatoid arthritis or some autoimmune phenomena. So that's where you want to start to put the pieces together. But I don't want to get too off track. We'll come back to that later.